You are listening to another BA Chat. Welcome. Welcome. We're so glad you're listening. We have an awesome, fantastic podcast for you today. Right next to me is the lovely Miss Rachel Coots on BA Chats. Why don't you tell them why we do this wonderful thing we do?
Well, we do this wonderful thing because we believe in the testimony. Testimony means do it again, God. So we have so many people on that share their testimonies of what Jesus is doing in their life. And what you need to know is it's completely appropriate that your heart jump, that your heart skip a beat, that you lose your breath a little bit and say, Father, do that again. Do that again in me. And maybe not the exact thing, maybe the exact thing, but something wonderful. So it's appropriate that testimonies affect all of us that way, that we say, sir, me. Let me be your target. Do it in me, around me, in me, anything.
Please. And then the second reason we have BA Chats is that in our body at Bethel here at Bethel, Atlanta, there are so many wonderful people. We have gold all around us all the time. And sometimes it just takes a little bit more than a 5-minute brief interaction at church to get to know people. Actually, it does take that. And so this is an opportunity for us to introduce you to some of the gold that's in our body and let you hear their stories, let you hear what God is doing in their life. So you know, oh, wow, that's who that is. Oh, my gosh. And then it's, hey, we got to get to know each other better.
It's only appropriate that we pull the gold out in each other. That needs to be all of our goals all the time. So BA Chats is pulling the gold out of folks.
Yeah, so tonight on your BA Chat, we're so excited to pull the gold out of the Peaveys.
Danny and Lana Peavey, thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We're so glad to be here.
You've been on our list for a long time, so we're glad that it finally happened.
There's a list.
Oh, there is a list.
I want to see that list.
We keep a list. Well, thank you guys for coming. Help our audience get acquainted with you guys. Lana, we'll start with you. How are you plugged in here at Bethel, Atlanta?
I just finished up second year at Bassam.
Right on.
Which was amazing and hard and beautiful and everything that we thought that it was going to be for our whole family. What else? What else can I say? We've been coming to Bethel for how many years, babe?
About 5.
6 years now.
Coming on 5.
Yeah, y'all were in the ABC building.
Yeah. We were in the ABC building.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
ABCs.
Yeah.
Well, Lana has a little bit of a reputation at school.
Yes.
Her reputation is where Lana goes, there are miracles that happen. So we want to hear some of those stories. Can you start picking a few faves?
I will. Yeah. Let me think.
Okay.
Think
Do
about
some good
those.
thinking because, boy, you came to school with some serious testimonies. They're just beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun. I've seen a lot of legs grow out. I actually saw another one this past week.
Get out.
Or it was, when did I go? It was last week. It was last
week.
Last week. I met up with these moms and a new mom group. I was the newbie in the class and I just fully showed up. I prophesied over this lady who was pregnant. I'm not sure how that was received, but I did it. And then this other lady, the leader, she was having all this back pain. So I prayed for her and watched her leg grow out, the muscles release. And it was awesome.
Oh, my gosh.
Jesus
it's so
really
awesome.
good.
See, this is Lana. Lana and Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to come back. I would like to know, how did the leg growing out thing start with you? We're going to go to Danny first and hear what Danny has been doing here at Bethel. And then we're going to come back and I want to hear when that started and how long has that been going? Because I know it's been a thing.
It's been a thing.
Okay.
That's so
been a
cool.
thing.
All right.
Salt in the oats there, people.
All right,
Yeah,
Danny.
so I went through first year at Bethel and second year. And then helped a little bit with fourth year, which was a new year for the school.
Just this last year, right?
Just this last year. And, just generally just trying to help out where I can. And been almost 5 years for both of us.
Nice.
That's so great. You know what I love about when I walk into Bassam and I see Danny standing there? I'm like, I just feel the strength of the Lord. I'm like, wow. Like, I just feel like, muscles just got flexed. Because
there must be spiritual muscles because I don't know what muscles.
Well, that's
you're
what I'm
looking at.
referring
Yeah,
to.
exactly. Precisely.
I just feel the strength of heaven on the scene.
No shame, Danny. Spiritual muscles are better than external ones any old day. We all know it's true.
If we compared it, you would be with it. It's okay.
That's so funny.
That's awesome.
Oh, well, good. Okay, so you finished 2 years and then helped with fourth year. How was that last year with just developing? Because brand new year, right?
Yeah, it was great. I unfortunately couldn't complete a lot of it just because of our work schedule. And then, Lana did so much sacrificing for our family when I went the first 2 years.
I did.
And
Preach.
So, I just wanted to also make sure that she was having the same experience that I did. And that meant taking care of Griffin and the family. And then I'd started a business like 2 years ago, and then that's crazy. So it was great, though. It was fun to serve under Laura and just help out with what she was doing.
Okay. Well, we're going to get back to these testimonies, but tell us a little bit about you again. You mentioned that you started a business. So what is your business?
Yeah, so I'm kind of a sales and marketing consultant. We do a lot of websites and branding and messaging and marketing and things like that.
Gotcha.
But just started that about 2 years ago. But before that, I spent about 12 years in the corporate world, just in enterprise sales, working for Apple and IBM and really big companies. So been doing that for quite a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you enjoying being your own boss?
Yeah. No, it's a lot of fun. It's been quite a journey just to kind of go from big company stuff to doing your own thing. But it's been really fun so far.
Awesome.
It's the hardest I've ever seen him work.
Yeah.
But
Really?
it's also
I bet.
the most alive I've ever seen him.
That's a big
Yeah.
It's
deal.
been
that's
really
fantastic.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Good. Lana, what about you? What do you do, girl?
I am a construction manager for a developer who does high-rise residential in Atlanta.
That's so great. What does that mean?
What does that mean exactly? So my background's engineering.
Nice.
For the developer, when we're building a building, I am on the job site a lot, making sure that the contractor's doing what they should be doing. I review all their pay apps, process any changes that have to be made. I'm basically a liaison between the owner, the architect, the engineers, and the contractor.
Wow.
So
That
just
sounds very exciting.
Making sure that the owner's vision is being put into the building.
Very exciting. In Atlanta?
In Atlanta, yeah.
Oh, how fun. There's so much building going on
There's
there.
a
I'm
lot.
sure you stay busy.
He does buildings in Midtown, so
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
fun.
Yay.
Trust me, at our house, if the plumbing goes out, I am not the one that is fixing that problem.
I fixed that
Yes.
one. Yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
best.
the roles are reversed.
Yeah, I know how to do that.
Kindly,
Glad-
gladly.
I'm like, can you go get this tool for me? And he's like, huh? What? What's that?
So nice. That's so good.
So I'm just curious,
Yeah.
hearing from going from the corporate world to owning your own business and then being just super in your role of what you do. How do you feel like you get the opportunity to display heaven on a daily basis in your world, in your business?
Well, I mean, I have to be brief when I answer this. For me, that's a really long story, kind of just given my childhood and all the things that have happened. But short story is, I was one of those kids that was drawing Bart Simpson and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when I was 7, right? And ended up doing some weird music stuff in my late teens, and always kind of had this creative ability, but I didn't play drums or a guitar. I've been a really great connector of people, just have a big empathetic gift and like to connect with people. So it's taken me a good 38 years to realize like there's a such thing as being creative in business.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
it's not a Christianese cliche thing. It's a real thing. And so
Jamie, you got to talk into that a little bit tonight. We need to hear about it.
Yeah. I mean, so I think just not to go too much on that.
You can go too much on that.
Well, I just think the first thing God did was create an economy, and
How so?
Well, I mean, created the heavens, the earth, and he put the gravity and the laws and
Awesome.
the sun and the moon and the stars in motion, and he created man, and it's interesting in Genesis he said, name the animals, and he put Adam to work before the fall.
That's awesome.
So there's something really holy about, business and an economy, and God Himself created one before the fall.
Yeah.
And so there's something really holy to me about work, and even in the Christian world, sometimes Christians shouldn't make money, and they can't make money, and there's a stigma there. So I think for me, there's something very interesting in my path about that. All of this is how does how do we walk into business, or how do we walk into what people are doing in their lives? A lot of small business owners are owner operators. They're doing their pet projects. It's a lot of passion. Yeah. There's a lot of grace and a lot of things there for me that are just very, very interesting to me around creativity and business and how ideas come together, things like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm thinking a lot of our listeners have never associated economy with Genesis and the creation, but that's a beautiful connection. I love it. That was an economy.
Yeah. I mean, I felt like God, actually in second year, I think I was talking to John Pitzer about it. I felt like, I don't know where that came from, but it was just like, that's really what it is. I mean, it's the earth. It's where we live, of course, but it really is a working economy. Mm-hmm. And so I think the older I get, the more I realize it's not a prosperity gospel thing. There's something holy, though, around economies and money and, creating. And, that's just something I'm kind of really interested in.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great. You were at the right place. We want to hear all about it. Lana, I want to hear from you. Yeah. And then really, Danny, can we come back to that?
Sure.
But so I love the idea of revival in business and economy and Genesis and that the Lord wants us to do well. And even the term prosperity gospel. What are we supposed to be sharing? I mean, we're supposed to be teaching what? Like a condemnation gospel. Poor gospel. You stink gospel. That's the gospel I'm sharing. I mean, we need to even look at that term, I mean, of course, we're supposed to do well. We're supposed to do well in our marriages and our families and our business and our internal worlds and you name it. We're just supposed to prosper. Mm-hmm. So I want to come back and hear more about that. Super interesting. Okay, Lana, how did the growing the leg thing out start with you? Because it was a thing, sister.
It's totally a thing. It started in Bassam first year. One night they were teaching about healing, and Dion, he went up there and had a word of knowledge for lower back pain. And so I raised my hand because I'd struggled with that for years. And he prayed for me, and I was like, hey, well, can you pray for my leg? Because it's shorter than the other. And so we watched it grow out together. And that's how it started. Yeah.
That's a great starting point.
It was amazing. And it took me, I couldn't even articulate what had happened because they wanted us to share testimonies right after it happened. And I couldn't even put into words. I just got up there with the mic and rambled something, and nobody knew what I said or understood what had happened. I just was in so much shock. So I don't know how much time passed, but I threw out my back and the muscle went tight again and my leg went back up. And I remember laying on the floor. I'd yelled for Danny, and I was like, God, this is amazing. You're just going to get to do it again. You're going to do it again.
Wow.
And Danny prayed for me, and it didn't happen. And then we came to church the next day, and Donnie prayed for me, and then the back pain left.
Wow.
And then that day, I went to Krog Street, and I got a word of knowledge about this lady who had back pain. And so I went up to her and asked her about it, and she said yes. And I was like, is your foot one leg shorter than the other? And she said yes. And so we watched it grow out in Krog Street Market. And then it happened again. And then it happened again. And I shared the testimony at church, and then more and more and more people. And the number now is up to 16, I think, that I've seen. But one in particular is really special to me that I want to share. This one was at work, and I'd prayed for my boss before, Frank, who's amazing. But this wasn't him. This was my boss's boss. This is the owner of the company. Okay. The developer walked by my desk one day, and he said, oh, my back is hurting. And I was like, Jesus, is that you? And I was like, Jesus, I can't do this if this is not going to happen. I'm going to look like a crazy person. He does not believe in Jesus, has no grid for healing.
Wow.
And this is a line that I hadn't crossed with him. I hadn't shown up in this way before with him.
Wow, that's great.
And so I asked Scott, is his name. I was like, is one of your legs shorter than the other? Because I told Holy Spirit, I made a deal. I was like, if it's shorter, then I'll do it. Then I know it's you. And so Scott went back to his office. And then about 45 minutes later, he was like, yes, one leg is shorter.
Wow. He didn't say anything when you asked him? He just went to his office?
He went to his office to check. And then he came back. Yeah. And then,
check that out.
Yeah. And I was like, you're going to think I'm crazy. And he goes, I already do.
Oh, well, great. We got nothing to lose.
Right.
Big gulps.
And then I just told him, I was like, I've prayed for some people and I've seen their backs get healed and their legs grow out. And I was like, can I pray for you? And he was like, all right. So we went to his office and I prayed for him. He's Jewish.
Okay.
He's Jewish, not practicing Jewish, just
born Jewish. Sure.
And doesn't celebrate the holidays or doesn't have a relationship.
Okay.
And his legs started moving and I was like, Scott, do you see your leg? I was like, are you moving it? And he goes, no, I'm not, but I feel it. And so we just watched it grow out together. And then when we got done, and I prayed in Jesus' name. And when I said Jesus, he like looked at me with his eyes really big. But he was like, how did you do that? And I was like, God just loves you so much. He goes,
Lana.
Is there a way we can monetize that?
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was like, Scott, what is freely given, you freely give. You can't monetize that.
Oh,
Such a developer.
God.
Like,
Best ever.
There was this guy in the Bible that tried to do that one time. You go read the story.
When she was telling me
so
this story,
funny.
like, this is probably one of the, I don't know, number 14 or 15. So, you come home from work, you're getting dinner on the table, the kids are going crazy or whatever. Hey, babe, another one happening. Oh, God, really? Yeah, it was with my boss's boss. And I'm like,
Oh.
God, I hope this is good,
you're not going to get fired, are you? I think that's what he
Pretty
said.
much. Yeah, I'm like, is this good or bad? Okay, it's good. Okay, continue.
Before the story goes on, I just need to know, is it good or bad?
Are you fired?
Yeah. Are you fired? Are you good? Okay, tell me more about the Lord. Come on.
Well, but the way he said it was, this is very valuable. So he's actually right. I mean, he was just seeing the value in praying and seeing a miracle.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, all of his back pain was gone. It was amazing. That one was really special to me. And
Sure.
I think I've prayed for everybody in our office at some point. I had
That's awesome.
His dad works in our office too. We call him Mr. L. This is Scott's dad. And just today, I don't even know how they were talking about it, but he pointed to me and he goes, that's my pain reliever right there. Whenever I'm in pain, I just go to her. And I was like,
That is a fantastic claim to fame. Yeah.
Wow. So when did this start with you? Like, when did you start stepping out and really praying for people?
Bassam first year.
It was Bassam.
I had prayed for people prior to that. I had, I don't know, probably 10 years of praying for people and reading all of the stories, all of the stories in the Bible about healing, just because I had a heart for it. But I didn't start seeing them happen until Bassam first year.
Oh my gosh. Best ever.
It was amazing. So if you want these testimonies for yourself, go to Bassam. Do it.
And there you go. Shameless plug. Right.
She went after it for a long time. It was really awesome to watch.
It's beautiful. It's just my heart. And you asked him, how do you show up at work? And that's how I show up. I don't love what I do. It's not my passion. I have grace for it right now, and my boss is amazing, and it is exactly what we need for right now in our lives.
Sure.
But that's how I get excited, is looking for opportunities to pray. I've prayed for so many contractors randomly on the job site. That's how I show up.
That's beautiful.
It's so beautiful. It's so happy because it's unfair to me to keep the gospel from certain types of people because they don't look a certain way or talk a certain way or we're not comfortable. Mm-hmm. I mean, goodness needs to come into contractors and good grief. They need to be shown love the same way that all of us do.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful. Lana.
It's a lot of fun.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
It's an adventure for sure.
Contractors are probably the top source of our touch points, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, that's manual, hard labor,
hard labor.
out doing massive things. You can hurt yourself.
Yeah.
Lots of
injuries.
injuries.
I have a hard time in the yard.
I'm with you on that.
Well, Danny, was your experience at Bassam similar? Which it doesn't have to be, but it's interesting to see what people will experience in school and how they come out after they're done.
Yeah.
What was your experience?
So Bassam was really interesting for me because kind of just the family I grew up in, my dad and mom got radically saved in Boston, Massachusetts. Jesus movement. Keith Green on the piano.
Right. On.
My dad saw a demon come out of him. He started preaching when he was 20. I mean, they moved us to Atlanta to start a church like when I was like 4.
Whoa.
Right?
I didn't know this.
With his friend, my dad was like, Jesus is coming back.
It's gorgeous.
Jesus is coming back. He didn't have a degree. He didn't have he was going for it.
Wow.
So, I'm sorry I go around to answer
No,
the
you
middle.
just go.
But, so, if my dad hears this, he knows the story, but he had a tough time. He had 5 kids. Our sister passed, but he raised 4 boys. I'm the oldest out of 4.
Wow.
And, he was the youngest out of 6 kids. His, again, Irish Catholic up in Boston, just his mom went through the Depression.
Wow.
So, he grew up feeling really rejected, and his mom and dad never went to a baseball game. And so he met the Lord radically, moved us down here. But, growing up, I think he, had a lot of challenges with just, depression and anxiety. And I remember being 15 years old, walking in the kitchen, just feeling his weight, like feeling the heaviness of what it was. And so, we had a Pentecostal Assemblies of God sort of background. He was a deacon on the church, and he was the guy 6'5", standing up, translating somebody's word, shabba dabba dabba, and he's like, "Thus says the Lord," blah 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 blah. I'm 12 years old, going like this,
What is going on?
So it was ingrained in me, but I think I picked up a message somewhere down the line that said, whether it's perfectionism, it was, self-hatred. I don't know if it's called an empath, but just picking up on maybe his depression or the kind of some of the toughness of the family that he was going through, with I think being disillusioned with moving to Georgia, starting a church. That didn't happen. And then I'm making $6 an hour digging a ditch with 2 kids at home, and trying to figure out I got to make a living. What does that look like? So he went. He calls it the wilderness. I went through 30 years of wilderness, but I think me kind of going to church and realizing like, okay, I met Jesus really young, but really not knowing God loved me. And not really realizing that because I had a lot of either I was picking up on his depression and feeling like it was my own.
Sure.
Or
like you said earlier, you have an empathetic gift. So
or
that's how that would go in a house.
What I feel like Michael Maiden even at one point said is that if you're kind of prophetic, working that gift out is sometimes is a really ugly process.
Sure.
So. The way Bethel kind of was really beautiful for us is because I met Lana when I was like 28, and I met her after I read the Song of Solomon and had a really just super quick. I read the first chapter. It said, the woman represented the bride of Christ, the guy represented God, and chapter 1, the girl looked at her skin and said, "I'm dark but lovely," and I read some studies on it, and it meant. It wasn't the color of her skin. It was she was visually seeing hatred and self-hatred and shame and, all these bad things. But the whole Song of Solomon, the guy who represents Jesus, just says, "You're beautiful, you're lovely, you're holy, you're white, you're pure." And I even now, like I remember being 27,
I can't stand it.
just crying, right? Because they make love in chapter 4, and by the end, she's like, "No, I am holy, I am lovely, I am beautiful." And I saw that, and the Lord showed me like. And again, this is not on my parents, but it was like, your childhood growing up, you just have never seen yourself the way you're supposed to.
Yeah. It sounds like there was just an identity, like the Lord was saying, hey, here's your identity.
Yeah. And
here's your true one.
And so that was 27. We got married. And I'll be really candid, for 7 years or until we moved to California, moved back, for about 4, 5, 6 years, I wasn't jaded against the church, but I had a problem with like fast food Christianity.
Oh, sure.
And I would walk around the house and I'd say, "No, we're not going to that church." And I was like, because Lana, all it's about is the way you look at yourself. I didn't have a language for identity like Bethel does, but I was like, you just have to look at yourself the way God does. And that's what I learned in Song of Solomon. And I'm telling you, after I got that lesson, I met her and we got married in 6 months.
Wow.
So God had to show me like what it was like to be a man. And you have to have the right identity to be a father. And so when we moved back to Georgia, and it's funny, we were living in California. I was all about this, what we call identity. And I was meeting up with a bunch of Christian brothers out there. We'd have coffee and talk about these deep things of life. And my cousin Vinny, yes,
you have
Vinny.
a cousin
I
Vinny.
have a cousin Vinny. He's
Very
Italian.
Italian.
He's like, hey, bro, you got to read this book. And he gave me Chris Valentine, Supernatural Ways of Royalty. I looked at the title. I'm like, come on, man, this is hogwash. This is all that hogwash. I was like, and I literally just put it somewhere.
Wow.
We moved back to Atlanta. Somehow, another buddy says, hey, you should go to Bethel, Atlanta, just given some of the talks we had. And I'm like, okay. So we go visit. And
back up. We
Yes.
got to Bethel because we listened to Blake Healy's.
we listened to that after my buddy told me
Oh, okay.
that. But yeah, we ended up researching, of course, listening to a Blake Healy podcast.
And then
Hey.
Danny read Blake's book,
I
and
read
he
Blake's
hadn't
book.
read
Veil?
a book the entire time that we'd been married. This is like
Yeah.
year
I
7
read
or
it
8.
back to back.
And I love to read. And so when he was like, you've got to read this, I was like, what?
Well, I actually
I
listened
will
to
read it.
Read it.
I listened to Blake's podcast, and he was telling a story about when the climax of the story was Jesus kissed a girl that had chains on, and the chains fell off. Do you remember that story?
I do.
And I literally started crying in my living room in Atlanta. And so we went to Bethel, Atlanta, ABC building, 2014, fallish. And I think it was Jen Stockman that this next story happened with. But I think Jen was doing the announcement transitions.
She was.
Like she had just the, hey guys, Saturday we're having kids bop or whatever it's, and I started crying. She wasn't saying any scriptures. It's just like, I hadn't been I've been to church. But it was what I was looking for, like just the presence and the heaviness and just identity. And I didn't know it yet that you guys, your core competency was identity. But I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. So me going to the school was really just, I feel like God's way of taking that 6 years and just, doing a chiropractic adjustment with the identity and just, this is it. And it was 2 years of I mean, I tell her it was really a pregnancy for me. 6 years was, the pregnancy and the birth. And, then I graduated second year and launched the business. I mean, it took off. So,
Wow.
sorry, a really long-winded
No,
explanation.
no, please don't apologize. So your takeaway from school was identity. Like you were seeing and
Identity for me was experiential when I showed up at school. It wasn't learning it for the first time. It was like, now I have words to what it is. I had carried identity my entire life, just with everything I just said, with my experience with my family and my dad and everything. So it meant a lot more to me. I'm not saying it doesn't mean a lot to others, but it wasn't just sitting down and learning, oh, this is how God sees you. I've lived through the doldrums of depression.
yeah.
I've lived through the hell of all that emotional, just, manipulation and just heavy stuff. And so it meant a lot to me to go through the school.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot.
We both had a lot of emotional healing over the past 4 years. And I would say that it saved us. It saved our family. It saved our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Like our trajectory is totally different than it was 4 years ago.
Where are you headed?
Only good things.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we're not afraid to talk about it. It was. What she said. I mean, without getting super too spiritual, our destiny and family line was under attack.
Well, sure.
I mean, even our marriage, first 10 years. I mean, it was hard, but we felt like there was just something else, just like,
Sure.
pressing down. So yeah, I mean, we looked at it as an investment, a
Wow.
massive investment,
Wow.
big time,
And you got a beautiful
You got a great
return.
Yeah.
beautiful.
It's priceless. Yeah.
It really is. It's changed. And again, this is not me trying to plug the school. It's changed the trajectory
Of our
of
family.
everything.
Yeah.
And that's so great.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh man, I'm grateful for that. What a wonderful story. I don't even know if you guys remember this or if you remember this, and I don't know if this was the first time that you guys were at Bethel, but the first time we met you, we were sitting in a row in front of you, and Rachel had a word of knowledge for you, Danny.
Really? I don't.
And it had to do with the depression. And I remember,
remember that.
because you told me the story after church, and you started speaking to him, and he, like, your head goes like boom, like this, and tears just start
wept.
pouring down your face.
That sounds right.
Do you remember this? How do I not remember this?
I remember it vividly, and I'm like, how do you not remember this? Like, it was such a super powerful moment. And I remember thinking, like, that's just such a little coin that I carry around in my pocket. Like, oh, I remember that one.
Wow. Thanks for bringing that up.
And to watch from that moment, like, and I remember you explained to me what was happening, to watch from that moment to where you are now. I'm just like, man, Lord, that is just a fantastic gem to carry around, to watch the trajectory of your life change like that from that moment in that.
Were we at the ABC building?
We were.
Oh
I
my
think I do
gosh,
remember
you
We were on
guys.
the right-hand side. We're like 2 rows back, and you were right behind us.
I remember that,
You
actually.
know, that whole Jesus putting you on like a glove is very literal sometimes. I do not remember this.
I think I really do remember that, actually. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
It's good to
It was
remember.
Wow. It's a big deal.
You gave me a prophetic word about joy and the wells of joy that are in me. And that was in one of my darkest periods. So all these little God moments, it's just enough to keep your hope up and keep you in it, you know? It's so beautiful.
Each one of them is a course reset. Like each one of them just keeps pulling you further, further, you know, into Jesus and towards him and where he wants us to get, which is always good.
Yeah.
Wow. You guys, this is beautiful. Oh, happy day.
It's a happy day.
It
It's
is such a happy day.
Yeah.
Lena, what were we talking about earlier about that when you were at school? Oh, in the emotional healing, I wanted to come back to that. Is that something that just happened in the atmosphere? Or was that something that we were teaching on? And then I do want to, one of the things that I love about you too.
The emotional healing for me was definitely a process. I mean, I wish it had been the instantaneous leg grow out situation, because that would have been a lot easier. I don't know if it would have been as rich as what this is and as teachable. I think that especially this second year, I started to see how God was putting it all together and how mind, body, and soul are all interconnected, and how I had to address all of those to get my healing.
Wow.
So I had all these struggles with my body for years. And some of that was wrapped up into, I needed to take my thoughts captive. But it was hard for me to take my thoughts captive when my body was deficient in certain vitamins, like the chemical imbalance is a real thing.
Sure.
And so one specific one is vitamin B. Like, I can tell the difference if I'm not taking my vitamin B.
Wow.
My thoughts get dark, and I'm like, have I taken my vitamin D today? But if those things are working the way that they should, then it's easier for me to take my thoughts captive. And when you take your thoughts captive long enough, it just gets easier and easier. And after I did that for a while, I was able then, it's like the wounds in my heart, they weren't so festering anymore. They were still there, but they had kind of scabbed over, It's like I could poke them.
Sure.
And they didn't just, ooze with blood anymore. But once I was in that place, I could go sit in those wounds and let Jesus heal them. But
awesome.
I had to take my thoughts captive first. Like, I couldn't even get to the wounds because I couldn't get past these thoughts,
Sure.
Like, I just wasn't even healthy enough. And I think all the little touches in BASM, it's hard to articulate specific moments where you have thought patterns that change, or where something like seeps down into your soul, the truth of who you are and the truth of who God is. But you just keep showing up, and then just progress happens. And it's just really beautiful. Once I got through that, and my biggest fear was to sit in the pain of my past. So once I faced that biggest fear and I let God into those places, I started getting breakthrough in all these other areas. It's
Like what? Like what kind of
oh my
breakthrough?
gosh, I can't wait to tell you. I'm going there.
Do it.
So, relationships.
Oh, yeah.
Relationships restored. Like, my mom apologized to me about something that I hadn't thought about in years. And she never opened up to me. Like, we have a great relationship, but she never opened up to me about, I call him my DNA dad. I have my dad, who is my stepdad, who's my heart dad. And then I have my DNA dad, who was super abusive and an alcoholic and terrorized her, basically. She never talked to me about him. But I was able to articulate to her for the first time that I didn't feel safe around men because I didn't feel safe around my dad and just what I had seen and experienced. And we just had this beautiful conversation that I wasn't even contending for, that just happened. I didn't even need that, but it was just beautiful that it came and we had it. And it was just a beautiful moment. One really big one was, had to do with Danny and I. So we've been married 11 years.
Oh, good job, you guys.
Yeah,
Way to
yeah,
go.
yeah.
11 years. Way to go.
I don't know what I'm doing.
The first 8 of those years, sex was really painful for me. And it took a lot of different layers and on the reasons why. And it was mind, body, and soul again. I had to address all these different layers. But even after the pain had gone, I still had all this anxiety. I can only liken it to post-traumatic stress.
Wow.
Like I would physically stress sweat and cringe at Danny's touch, even if it was a non-sexual touch, just going to give you a hug, because my body anticipated pain that wasn't even there anymore.
Wow.
And so that was really hard. So that was, pain stopped at 8. And then anxiety, I'm still walking through some of that now.
Just
but it's
healing.
It's a lot less.
Would you say it's just healing?
It's just part of healing. But one thing that hadn't happened our entire marriage is I've never had an orgasm during intercourse. Ever.
Wow.
And
Bethel Atlanta podcast.
yeah.
There it is.
More people need to talk about this stuff. So
We can celebrate you. We
I'm
can.
going to do it. And I prayed. This was the week before BASM graduation. I prayed, God, because I just thought there's a statistic out there that says 1 in 3 people can't have orgasms during intercourse.
Okay.
Like your bodies just aren't made that way. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to ask Jesus for this.
Oh,
like,
Lana.
if this is available for me, I want it. And that was it. That was the end of the prayer. And I didn't think about it at all again. And the next time that we had intimate time together, I had an orgasm. Wasn't even thinking about it. It happened
it's
the next
beautiful.
time.
Beautiful.
I wept like a baby.
I bet you did.
Oh my
As
goodness.
did I.
Yeah.
You guys, that's beautiful.
I wept like a hardcore baby. And then the next day is BASM graduation. I randomly have to go to the store. Side note, I use natural deodorant. And because I was talking at graduation, I was like, I need to get me some
That's
deodorant.
right, because you were your class speaker this
Yeah.
year.
I was
Is
the
that right?
class speaker. I was like,
Congratulations.
thank you. I need to get me some real deodorant, so I'm not going to stress sweat through my
Natural
outfit.
stuff is just not
It's
gonna
not
do.
going to cut it.
That's so funny.
And so I left the house at 7:30, and I opened the door, and there's this beautiful rainbow. I'm going to cry, perfectly over my doorstep, right in front of me. And I was like, oh, sweet Jesus, the promises of God are so true.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Luis had given me a prophetic word when I was in Bethel Life 5 years ago. And he had no idea I didn't talk in Bethel Life.
This is Luis Velasquez.
Yes.
They're coming up.
Yep.
This is a shout out to Luis and Neva. They'll
You're
be
on
here
the
before
list.
long.
You're on the
You
list.
guys made the
Coming.
list.
Yep.
He'd given me this word, didn't know anything about me and Danny, didn't know that we were in the doldrums, that our marriage was so sad and depressing. Didn't know anything because I didn't talk. I mean, shocker. I didn't say anything in Bethel Life like the whole time that I was there. But he pointed at me one of the last nights, and he stood up and he pointed at me and he goes, your marriage is going to look like a permanent honeymoon. You are always, everyone around you is always going to say, are they on their honeymoon?
Oh, wow.
And that's the word that I thought when I saw the rainbow. And it just came back in a flash. And I just wept all over again and ran and got Danny and we celebrated. And it was only there for 5 minutes. I literally could have missed it.
Worth every single tear. Those are precious tears.
Yeah.
So did you just say that you getting healthy, pursuing the Lord, pursuing breakthrough, learning how to take your thoughts captive, learning that it's mind, soul, that it's body, soul, and spirit, that you're having breakthroughs, that it's not like you were praying for those, but that they just happen.
They're just happening.
As your health increases.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean,
Beautiful.
but yeah, I mean, it was tough. I think, when you're married, it's feel like you're shadow boxing sometimes. So it was,
Way to say that.
It was, I don't know. It was kind of a tough time because
It was super hard.
yeah,
It
So
is
many
hard
fronts.
sometimes.
yeah, that
It's that funny thing that we've always teased. We learn how to do so many other things that are so less important. But marriage is just like, I don't know, you pick it up as you go along, looking at people's parents and your parents, and you just kind of pick it up. But no one's taught very well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I always go back to the Song of Solomon, but one of the things. I mean, we went through it. I mean, we went through just, like she said, 8, 9, 10 years, and it was more than just intimacy. Although I think that was really important.
It is important.
But I think one of the things that we both did, like even around the school, I actually had Mike Edwards call, because you're going through the time like that. It's anything, but anybody going through anything tough that's been over 5, 6, 7, 10 years, it's whether it's health or whatever, it's tough. So you get you can see counselors, you get advice, and everybody helps you go towards the next level you're supposed to go to. But I'll never forget talk to Mike, and we were talking about all this, and he's like, Danny, you know what? You got to die, man. And that's all he really said. He said a little bit more than that, but I think what happened, I think what really it was, and she's right, it's, for you, the mind, body, soul, and how it all connects, and your thoughts and the anxiety. But I think what we did spiritually, and even for me, it was painful for me to, if I'm not getting my needs met, or I'm mad because of something, and I'm doing everything I can. And that's what I said for years. Like, I'm doing everything. I'm doing the flowers. I'm doing the date. I'm doing, I don't think anything's wrong with me. Sure. But I did make a heart shift. And that really looked like if I'm not getting anything that I need, it doesn't matter anymore.
Wow.
And
That's beautiful.
I'm going to go do the extra 2 loads of dishes, or I'm going to die. I actually said to myself, I'm going to die. And it hurt.
Yeah.
And, I think it was the first time, we both sacrificed for each other, but I personally made a heart shift. And then I think Lana did the same thing. I think we both were like, you really have to die.
Yeah.
Like, really, really die. And I know it sounds like super weird,
No.
but I don't know what it was. But when we both like really died, I the Michael Maiden word we got, I mean, just all this.
Wow.
I mean, it's so true about Jesus dying for us and what that looks like in a relationship. Yeah. I mean, it's so true.
I think that when he did start dying to himself daily, or moment by moment even, and this was a time too where I had a lot of crap coming up. Like, I was getting triggered by a lot of things. I was bringing up old stuff and just sharing like my heart wounds, and he was dying to himself even in those moments, and it looked really ugly sometimes. But I think when he started doing that trust thing, that I had a problem with trusting men, like, I started to be able to trust him.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And that's when it shifted. So he died to himself, and then I started to be able to trust him, which was something that was really hard for me because my
huge.
like DNA dad stuff. And then a little while after that is when we got the Michael Maiden word. And the first thing that Michael Maiden said to Danny was, "You are a safe person."
Oh, wow.
And that, I think that was more for me than it was
You
for
heard
him.
it, yeah.
That was for my heart.
Sure.
It was like the seal that I needed on me, like putting my toe out. Can I trust him? Can I trust him?
And I was confused because I mean, if she said that to me, I didn't say woman, but I looked at the fake watch on my arm, and I'm like, I've been with you for 8 or 9 years. Like, I don't cheat. I don't. I'm a social drinker. I have one good beverage. I don't go to the clubs. I work hard. What do you mean you don't trust? I go to church.
Yeah.
I go to a prophetic church. Like, so it was really good for me. I think God was teaching me, like, listen, it's not about what you're doing right or doing wrong. It's you're the man. And, Christ died first. Like,
that's beautiful.
You gotta die. And
because,
it's just crazy how it's just one
Heart shift.
Because how much beautiful did he do?
Yeah.
You know?
For real.
Yeah.
The scripture keeps coming to mind is that a seed has to go in the ground and die before it can bear much fruit.
Oh, come on.
So, that's just really what's happening is
so
the
good.
seed is going into the ground, and so it can bear much.
Well, I think where
That's good.
Christians sometimes don't practically know what that means. And I'll just use myself as an example. If I'm, or a husband and wife, if a husband cussing out a wife, going nuts, or whatever bad things are happening, that practically looks like, unless hopefully it's not it's safe and no one's getting beat or anything illegal.
Yeah.
But, it looks like you just taking it or just, seeing through the lens of this is a destiny thing, right? Like we're going to keep our eyes on the destiny. So it doesn't matter which party's doing what to each other, again, within the framework of nobody's getting beat or anything crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think sometimes, in marriage, it's like we don't really know specifically, like situation by situation, what that really means. And it's not like you have to take a torturous thing.
No.
I think there's a grace there, and I think we all have the Holy Spirit. We can know what to do in this moment. But that was a big thing for us.
Sure, I bet. This is one of the million reasons why we have him. I mean, we just have to have him to bring what we know to life, to tell us what to do in that moment. What does this situation call for? It's why we have him. So yay for him. You guys, we're going to have to wrap this up, but we're going to kind of spring this on you guys. We always open it up for our guests at the end of our podcast to impart anything that you really feel has just been burning in you, anything where you really felt the Holy Spirit in our chat. Yeah. And if you hear any words of knowledge, we've had lots of people get healed and just from these words at the end of the podcast. And so we've seen some beautiful things. So we always like to open up to you guys. So anything you're hearing, seeing, feeling, you're more than welcome to share. Would you like to impart anything? Which, again, we didn't even get to this, but what I love about Lana was her questions in Bible. You always had good questions after I taught Bible. And you asked one great question about impartation. Actually, I took notes and changed my teaching. I was like, oh, okay, I need to explain this more thoroughly. So I loved your questions. They helped me get sharper. But anyway, if you have anything to impart, it always makes me think of you.
I would just say that if you have the Holy Spirit in you, you are already a healer. And so the only thing that I'm going to impart to you is a boldness and the courage to go up and do what you've already got in you.
It's beautiful. That's helpful. That's beautiful, to do what you've already got in you.
It's already there.
Do it.
That's good news.
That's a good word. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I would say is, family is so important. Just, our own families, our individual families. And so just maybe anybody or really any couple that has tried all the stuff, maybe even somebody right now on Google, doing a bunch of Googling on how to, what if she,
Yeah.
I just feel like there's somebody probably listening right now doing that. And
probably lots of somebodies.
I would say the answer is you got to die.
Wow.
The answer is you got to die.
You got to die to yourself.
Yeah.
Not die literally.
Thank you.
Die to yourself.
Thank you. Hey, we're in the prophetic. We can. No,
I love that.
yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I love
guys,
it.
Thanks so much. I heard a couple of things. I heard that somebody's getting healed, like their Achilles. They popped their Achilles, and the Lord's He's healing it back up right now. And then I also heard that somebody was having trouble with their right ear. They've been having ringing in their right ear, and the Lord is, He's healing that right now. Like that ringing is going to fade. If it's probably fading now, will probably fade until you go to sleep. When you wake up in the morning, you'll be able to hear. So, I heard that right ear ringing and Achilles
That's
right
good.
here, both on the right. Yeah.
I want to release that God wants us to do well. And I feel like there are multiple folks looking for jobs. And you just got to know that think the very best thing that you can think. Like in your imagination, let your imagination go to how good could this thing get? And then just know that Jesus is thinking 1,000,000 times past that. You just can't think as big as him. You can't think as good as him. He wants you to do well. So Ephesians 3:20, I'm hearing that super clearly. Yeah. He wants you to do well, more than you're asking for, more than you're thinking, according to the power that's working in you. Yeah, so that power that's working in you, just release junk and love him like wildfire, and know that he's good, and believe that he's got good things for you. He can do great things with that. So
yeah, you have permission to succeed.
Yeah, you've got permission to succeed. Do well.
That's awesome.
Well, that's going to wrap it up.
Peavey.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Rachel.
Big
Thank you,
God
Kevin.
bless you.
We love you.
Great big God bless you for being here tonight. Wonderful.
That was
Thanks
fun.
so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Those guys are awesome. All right, y'all remember, we love you.
Jesus loves you too.